Our radio audience has returned, and also returning here on the Rich Eisen Show is one of our favorites. He knows so much, and I just love the way our conversations go. I always am smarter for it when Brian Windhorst of ESPN calls into the program. How are you, Brian?
Hi, Rich. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How long have you been in the bubble in Orlando?
I have not been there. I'm not planning on going.
You're not You're not there. Okay. I thought you'd call in there. Okay.
Rich, I just couldn't. I've got a 2-year-old, and
I got it.
I just couldn't do it. And these players, I really, I feel it. I feel what they didn't really have a choice. So those of us who had a choice were fortunate.
Right. Okay. So, how much do you think the bubble is affecting what we're seeing? Just in everything from the play to the sense of being removed from the real world that the players led to what happened this past week. How much do you think that is playing into everything from what you're hearing, Brian?
Everybody I talk to in the bubble, Rich, I mean, I talk to people in there. I talk to multiple people every single day.
Yep.
And they all say, you have no idea how hard this is. And they say that not saying that they're in a prison. They're not saying that this is a hardship of their life. They're just talking about the challenge that is now a part of this whole thing. Having said that, I have seen it have no material effect on the quality of the games. In fact, one of the things that I thought for sure was going to happen is that we would see teams go into punt formation and just sort of give up, starting in those seeding games and then when they got behind in series. And we just haven't seen that. We have seen incredible competition on the court. The play itself has not shown any ill effects from the environment. And, Doc Rivers has said that he actually thinks that it's helped players to have that sort of TV studio setup so that they don't have the deep shooting backgrounds. He thinks they shoot better. The other thing that's happening is officials are calling more fouls, which is frustrating, but is actually creating more scoring, which is what people want anyway, and it gives teams a chance to get back in games. And I think they're calling more fouls because they can hear better. I think they hear contact more than they do. I don't know. That's just my theory. And so, while I do think it's difficult for them, I think the game has benefited.
Brian Windhorst here on the Rich Eisen Show. What is at stake for the Houston Rockets in this series?
Well, it's a lot at stake for their organization. I think, I don't know if Mike D'Antoni is under pressure because he doesn't have to prove anything. He will continue to coach in this league if he wants to. But, if they get knocked out in this round, there's a chance that he's going to be told, to move on. There's pressure on Daryl Morey, the general manager, who I don't think it was his burning desire to trade Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook, but he made the trade. And then he doubled down going small and fast at midseason. And more, there have been general managers fired for more than that. I think James Harden, who has had opportunity after opportunity over the last 3 years and has never been able to exceed them in the postseason. They've had just things slip through their fingers. I think everybody has a little bit of it, and yet they are the underdogs. They're the significant underdogs, and I think they are the team that will have potential significant changes if they don't win this series.
Why is D'Antoni not under contract past potentially this series? I mean, what gives there?
I think there's a number of different reasons. I think the reason he didn't sign the extension was he didn't want a 1-year extension. In addition to whatever the money was, I think he was like, look, I'll take a 3-year extension. Thank you very much. And I think that's why he didn't sign it. As for why the Rockets didn't feel the need to do it, I don't fully understand it. I don't understand why they haven't negotiated an extension with him in the last 2 days. He is a perfect coach for the way they want to play. And there is a reason why Tillman Fertitta does not want to do it. Only he knows why. Maybe it will present itself to us. Maybe it won't. But if they change coaches, maybe they will get a coach who's successful and takes them even further than D'Antoni. But I don't see – it's so hard to find a good coach, Rich, especially one where the personnel fits your vision. I mean, that's one of the things that happens all the time. You bring in a coach, and it takes either 2 years to get the players he wants, or he fails and he complains that they don't get the players he wants. Well, this is the project. This is a 3 or 4 year project to get the players that he wants. This is what teams want, to match their coach and their style with their talent. I don't see why you undo it, but I can't speak for a lot of things that happen in the NBA.
And then the last one on this subject of the Rockets is Russell Westbrook. Was he rushed back too soon? Because he looked occasionally dreadful, as we know, at the end of Game 6. Game 7 was a little bit better, but he just doesn't look. He does seem to have the burst, but he's not finishing, and it's not crisp. Let's put it that way, at all.
Well, that's a huge injury you have an injury to your thigh, a thigh muscle. I mean, we saw. I mean, look, no injury is the same. One of the things I learned is, every injury is different with every player. But you look at a guy like Patrick Beverley. He had a calf injury, right, and he missed 6 games. Well, obviously the thigh muscle is much bigger and stronger, and it would take longer to heal. And Westbrook came back quicker than the injury happened after, and he returned before. So I'm sure he's pushing it because it's the playoffs. The thing about Westbrook is that historically, he's had some injuries in his career, including a number of knee surgeries, and he has always come flying out of the gate when he's come back from injuries. It's one of the remarkable things about his career is the way he comes back from injuries. So I think part of it is he just feels like he's a guy who can deal with more than the average player, and we'll see whether that actually plays out or not. There's still time here. He's still getting theoretically better every day. And
meanwhile, I mean, just the Western Conference playoffs with the Lakers having this layoff now coming in against the Rockets. The Clippers got Beverly back, and it appears everybody is healthy and moving forward. What's the deal with Morris and his I guess imminent birth of a child or imminent suspension because of what happened with Luka? What's going on with him and the Clippers' opportunity that's right there in front of them, right here?
Well, he's not imminently being suspended. I don't know what's going on with his child, but in the Draymond Green, it's almost like the Draymond Green rule. Remember, Draymond Green did not get suspended for that finals game because he hit LeBron in that game. He got suspended for accumulation of flagrant foul points. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you want me to bore you with the system, but long story short, if he gets either 2 more flagrant ones or 1 more flagrant 2, it's a suspension. I'd like to point out they've just started round 2. Marcus Morris is an important player for them. So anything that would cause him to miss a game, whether it was the birth of a child or, hitting an outside or, hitting the point limit, would be hurtful to Clippers. Even last night, he hit 5 or 6 threes in that game. He's devastating when he's able to stretch the floor like that, and he's a very rugged defender. They're going to want him for every game of a possible Lakers series. So it's one of those things that's out there. There's so many things that happen during the course of a playoff run. Some of them are predictable, some of them are not. But, I'll tell you one thing. I am eyes wide awake. 2 flagrant foul points for Marcus Morris and counting. Keep an eye on that. I will definitely keep an eye on that. And, again, it's a doubleheader on ESPN tonight, starting with the Heat and the Bucks. Why are the Bucks in trouble of falling into an 0-3 hole, Brian? Rich, this reminds me so much of the 2009 Cavaliers. Now, maybe it's because I was covering that team, but to take you back, that was a 66-win Cavs regular season team. LeBron James was the MVP of the league, his first MVP award. They were a team that is, much like the Bucks in that they didn't really have a huge second star, although Chris Middleton is better than anything that the Cavs had back then. But they had a blend of young players and veteran players, Delonte West, Mo Williams, Ben Wallace, Wally Zerbiak. They had all these shooters. It was a team that, they started the season 1-2, and I think they pretty much rested LeBron down the stretch, and I think they lost a couple of games in the last week of the season. And other than that, they were like 65-8. Okay, they were like an incredibly juggernaut team, but they were not built for the playoffs, and they were not a title team. And that showed up in the postseason when they played the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic had owned them during the regular season, much like the Miami Heat felt really comfortable in their matchup with the Bucks. And while LeBron was great, and he was great in the series that they lost, it was clear that he didn't necessarily know how to lead a team, in under duress like that. Now I would argue that LeBron leading underdog teams, I mean, he has won as an underdog, with a lower seed. I mean, I don't know if you ever call him an underdog, but he has won repeatedly with the lower seed. He didn't learn how to do that. He didn't know how to do it yet. And at that time, that was when the clock was starting to tick on his free agency. And if you watch the Heat Bucks games during the regular season, just as if you would watch the Magic Cavs games as I did during the 2008-9 season, you would know that this was going to be a troublesome series for Milwaukee. And yes, Mike Budenholzer has made some frustrating decisions. If you're a Bucks fan, sitting Giannis, playing him fewer minutes in Game 2 than Game 1, not putting your best defensive players, on Jimmy Butler down the stretch of Game 1. Eric's. And by the way, back in that series, Stan Van Gundy outcoached Mike Brown, even though Mike Brown was the coach of the year. Right now, Mike Budenholzer is getting outcoached by Eric Spoelstra. So I look at the Bucks and I see tremendous team with a great system, but I don't see title team. And during the course of the season, this is what everybody in the league I talked to said. Yes, the Bucks are on pace for 70 wins. Yes, they've got a great defense, but they don't scare us. And I would say that on radio shows or podcasts, or I would write it, and people in Milwaukee would get frustrated with me. And so this is, I'm not saying here I was like, oh, they're going to get knocked out in the second round, but this is kind of the personification of what we watched for a long time.
And I'm mistaken, that game's on TNT to start, and the ESPN has Lakers Rockets. What did you make of Richard Jefferson's Twitter igniting statement that Giannis is more of a Pippen than a Jordan, meaning he's not the GOAT type player who can take a team on his shoulders himself, the alpha male, and that he's more of a, I guess, Robin, not the Batman. What do you think?
Well, I disagree with Richard on this. There are certain players you learn that about during their careers. Like I remember coming to that conclusion about Chris Bosh. As great of a player as he was in Toronto, it was clear that he was probably not going to have a great career if he was the best player on the team. He needed to go somewhere where he wasn't the best. I think Giannis can win you games with his play because he is an ace defensive player and he's a beast offensive player. I think what Richard is saying is that I think a better way to say it is that he is not a complete player yet. He has to develop his game a little bit. He has to learn some change-ups because right now, when the pressure gets on, he only knows one thing to do. He grabs the ball, puts his head down, and barrels to the hoop. And everybody in the league knows it, and so they get in his way and try to take charges. It's again, not unlike LeBron. LeBron would play ISO basketball and be afraid to pass to his teammates back in 2008-9. So, I know that they're not the same player, but I would say to you, if you want to say that Giannis is not a complete player now, then you should probably go back to 2009, take LeBron's MVP award, and say he wasn't a complete player because he wasn't. The LeBron in 2012 that won the title was holding the trophy for the first time was not the LeBron of 2009, and Giannis is 25. So I would just say to Richard, let's have this conversation in 3 years.
What team is Giannis on in 3 years?
This is going to be so fascinating, Rich, because the Supermax was designed from the ground up for this exact moment. The same situation Kevin Durant was in, which is why they created the Supermax. 7-year player in a small market. Pay him more money than he can possibly imagine. Make it so heavily weighted on the financial cost of leaving that the player feels financial obligation to stay. If Giannis signs it, the system would have worked by the owner's standards. If he doesn't sign it, you might as well take the system and throw it in Lake Michigan. Just take it out of the CBA. Just take it right out because it's not working. And to talk to people in Milwaukee, they think it's lunacy. They say, no, everything that this guy is doing says where he's staying. This is not his personality. He is aligned with Coach Budenholzer. He is building his dream home. This is not who he is. He is not like LeBron. He is not like Durant. He's a different guy who basically grew up as became an American basically in Milwaukee. This is his American hometown. They can go on and scold you all along the way. And I would just say that could be true, and the rules are in effect. But I would find it hard pressed for any player or any agent or any non-objective third party, forget the Bucks fans, to look at this situation and say, Giannis, now is when you want to sign, when you can get the same contract in a year and have more flexibility. So we're going to learn a lot about Giannis, about the CBA system, and about the future of the NBA when that contract is offered to him, whenever the offseason is deemed to start, whether it's October, November, whatever.
Brian Windhorst here on the Rich Eisen Show. Last one for you, sir. You mentioned Durant. Durant coming off from injury with Kyrie Irving in New York City, just as the Knicks continue to keep shooting themselves in the Dolan foot, or whatever you want to call it, is one of the most plum coaching jobs I think the NBA could offer up right now. And it goes to Steve Nash. Where did that come from?
By the way, it was 25 years ago this week that the Heat completed their transaction to hire Pat Riley.
Amazing.
$1 million in a first-round pick. What do you think would happen with the Knicks if they kept Pat Riley and made him team president?
Oh, please. Don't even get me started, man. I mean,
think about that one.
Please. I would have been amazing.
Think that this is, just think about that. You want to talk about great trades in NBA history? How about that one? Advantage Heat. I actually think this is one of the most challenging jobs out there. And I understand why people want the job, because if you're going to be a head coach, you don't want to take, ideally you don't want to take a team from 17 wins and try to get them to 37 over 2 years. You want to take a team from 40 wins and take them to 58 and try to win a title. You want to play for the whole thing. That's what you want. So I can understand why Steve Nash would take this, but I think it's an incredibly difficult situation. Number one, the personalities there are just challenging. It's not that I think that Kyrie and Durant are a bad fit. I think they're a great fit basketball-wise, but they're challenging. And again, it's not because they're petulant or because they're subversive. It's because I've watched them with their, they get into moods. They get into social media things. They get into issues with teammates. And put these two together, I just think it's going to take an incredible steadying hand to do it. I mean, Phil Jackson won 11 championships because he was able to manage complex personalities and star players. Yeah, the triangle was awesome, and the triangle did help get a lot of baskets, but he managed, Michael Jordan with Dennis Rodman, right? He negotiated Dennis Rodman to go to Vegas, right?
That's right.
Well, what's more important, getting a couple of baskets in the triangle or keeping Michael Jordan from wringing Dennis Rodman's neck? What's more important, getting Kobe and Shaq to play together, or getting Robert Horry open on the backside? I mean, I know getting the shot isn't not important, but that's the thing for Steve Nash. The challenge is going to be to get those two guys together. And one of the most fascinating things I've seen in the last 5 years in the NBA is that Kevin Durant chose to get into a marriage with Kyrie Irving. I just didn't see that as something that Durant would want. Kyrie did the sales job, to me, Durant would want to be with a guy like Kawhi, who can play sort of opposite on the wing from him and is no drama and doesn't really need much oil, can be totally fine. And Kawhi called him. Kawhi called him after they won with the Raptors last year and said, hey, you want to play together? But he was already betrothed to Kyrie. Kyrie got in with him. And, Kyrie has basically told two teams, I don't want to be with you anymore. And so now it's almost like kind of getting in for somebody with their third marriage. Okay, the first one was arranged. He didn't get to choose LeBron. LeBron and the Cavs chose him. But it's worrisome. It's worrisome to keep that together. Now, you could play this back in 12 months and say, boy, were you a fool after they win 63 games and go to the finals. I admit that that's possible, but I just think it's a huge hurdle. And any coach, I don't care if it was Greg Popovich, was going to have their hands full dealing with that. So I will be watching. and it'll be a heck of a soap opera, is my prediction.
Brian, love our chats. I say that every single time. I mean it. This is just, I love it. And thank you once again for calling the show, and we'll call you again real soon. Enjoy that baby of yours.
Enjoy your holiday weekend.
Thank you. That's Brian Windhorst of ESPN, which will have tonight's Lakers Rockets Game 1. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.